So anyways, what's up, fucker?
How the hell are ya?
Oh, just thinking about leaving my body and shit.
Yeah, definitely retuning my fucking energies to get pretty wavy, you know?
Yeah, I'm thinking about remote viewing, like somewhere around where Gina Carano showers.
We can get you the coordinates.
Science purposes only.
Yeah, just for research.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Mostly.
I was just thinking about while you were going to the bathroom was, so I think that maybe just even like researching this stuff and thinking about it is kind of the starting point of starting to transition and tune your frequency to a different, a higher level or a increasing our bandwidth. So, that being said, we went out this weekend. I told you we went out this weekend. We went to this karaoke bar for my sister-in-law's birthday party. And so there was like 40 people there for this birthday party, like all my sister-in-law's like family and friends and stuff like that. And they were all doing like karaoke and shit. And Kara and I got there a little bit late, and so we were sitting kind of, they had like these two huge tables, and we were sitting kind of just like two tables over here, then we had a four top, just kind of at the end of these tables. But it was just me and Kara that were sitting there, and we were like ordering food and like having a few drinks, and then all of a sudden this lady just came over and sat with us. Like, she sat down in one of the chairs. She's like, you mind if I sit here? I'm a kind of a hermit. I don't really leave my house, and I just feel like this is a safe space that I can sit down and we're like, oh yeah, sure, you're fine. Started having a conversation, and she was very like a very like open-tuned person, like her into like energies and stuff like that, like almost one of those people that, previously I'd be like, yeah, she's the type of person who has rocks in her pocket.
Yeah.
Like,
she's a person who knows her way around Reiki.
Yeah. Super nice lady, super, And so she's sitting there talking to her for a minute, and then like our food came, and I was like, you want some chicken wings? And she's like, sure, I'll have a chicken wing. Talking to her, and then all of a sudden this guy comes over. He sits down, and we start talking with him. And like he was like, yeah, I'm just waiting for for them to return and pick me back up and take me back up into the sky. And I was just like, this is so random, dude. Like, maybe our energies have just expanded to attract these other energies that, like, I don't know, I just thought it was it was so random that it didn't feel random. It seemed like it was like something that was attracted to us.
It's either that, or it's either something supernatural in nature,
or just people were fucking hammered as shit.
Yeah, or that guy was like, they're gonna come get me because I need to go steal more catalytic converters or something,
But yeah, he came over and he was sitting there talking to us for a while, and like, he was like, dude, I want to get your phone number, man. Call me. And like, so I was like, okay. Called him, and then he's like, I love that hat. Where'd you get that hat? I was like, oh, my wife made it. And then he's like, yeah, definitely call me because I want to buy one of those hats. And then another guy came over, and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing? And we're like, just chilling. And he's like, do you guys remember planking? I was like, yeah. And he's like, you want to see me plank? So he like was trying to plank on the stools like across from the table from us, like, and it was such a random thing that it was just like, have we gone too far? Like, has my consciousness expanded just to the space of like all-encompassing of all these random people.
Yeah, just magnetic and
Or maybe I
frequency.
just haven't been out to a bar in ages, so that's just the typical world now.
Yeah, it must just be you, because I go to the bar and nobody will talk to me. I go with my friends and sometimes they don't even talk to me.
No, they're like, the lady and the guy were just like, dude, this guy's awesome. You just have great energy. Like, dude, I was literally just sitting here like, trying to eat chicken wings.
I agree. I think you have great energy, but you're not a random person in the bar to me.
Yeah.
I know you.
Yeah.
So maybe you just like, your bandwidth is just opening up, ever widening.
Ready to remote view, do some astral detective
Work. What was it you said right after we wrapped on the last one? Astral glide. You do some astral gliding. That needs to be a shirt.
Definitely ready to do some astral gliding.
Astro gliders. Astral.
Let me
gliders.
be your astral guide. Take you to Nirvana.
Let me be your astral guide. That's
So yeah,
odd.
we just talked about astral projection. And so we're going to get into remote viewing.
Remote viewing. So yeah, remote viewing is super interesting.
Super interesting.
To the point where the CIA has been using it for a long time, just like with astral projection, but I think some of the data is a little bit more quantifiable with remote viewing, because there's been quite a few cases with actual proof.
Yeah.
And some things are a little far-fetched, but at the same time, with some of the people they come from that have these proven cases where they have this high accuracy of remote viewing, and then they remote view something else that's completely outlandish, and they give their perspective on it, and you're like, wait a second, hold the fuck on. You're melting my brain.
Yeah, are you on so super serious and accurate on one hand and so full of shit on the other hand?
Yeah. Are we in that like 15% margin of error, or is this the 85% accuracy?
Yeah.
And so with that, there's two big names with remote viewing. There's Ingo Swann and there's Joe McMoneagle.
McMoneagle.
Big Joe.
Big Joe.
Uncle Joey.
Uncle Joey!
Joey. So you could delve into his history at any point, but I'd rather just tell some of the more fun stories.
Yeah, I mean, I went down such a rabbit hole with him, and he talks about a lot of the same stories, but like even on the Sean Ryan show, his interview with Sean Ryan was like 6 hours long.
Yeah.
And I listened to the whole thing, fucking totally enamored the whole time, just like, what?
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but there's been other people he's worked with that will tell stories about him.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always tell when somebody's like hyperinflating another person.
Yeah.
But this goes like beyond a hero worship. Like, these people tell these stories about him and they're dead sincere about it. And even him, to a degree, when you hear him talk, he kind of reminds you of like a cool old uncle or your grandpa, where he'll tell these stories just offhandedly about these remote viewing experiences. And it's not dissimilar from like when your grandpa would tell you about, you know, when he was a young hooligan rolling around in his Model T.
Yeah.
They have the same energy of when he's telling these stories, to where you don't question it, you just believe it because his energy is on point with it.
Yeah.
And I was
Almost like
so
that,
cool.
like downplayed, humble, like
Yeah.
like
It's no big thing to him.
talks about it. He talks about like a lot of the things that he talks about and says this is what happened. He thinks he just talks about it as a matter of fact, and like same thing I would talk, like I just told you about the bar the other day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm joking about it, but at the same time all that shit actually really happened.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And never at any point did I be like, nah, he's full of shit. Like, I
no way,
100%
that guy
believe
didn't
that.
try to plank.
No,
Yeah, he did.
I believe it.
The bouncers came and kicked him out right after.
That's it, buddy. 86.
Yeah.
Go plank outside.
Yeah, I could go plank on the sidewalk where you puke.
He's just like, I made it to 35 seconds. But yeah, no, when he tells these stories, it really is like a reminiscing thing for him.
Yeah.
It is very point blank, and he tells it very playfully instead of like a Stephen Greer kind of way of like, I'm going to tell you this story and you have to believe me.
Yeah.
Where it feels kind of forced versus him. It's just like, let's have a beer. Tell me all about it, you know? One of my favorite stories, and somebody else was telling it, was they had called him about a missing kid. This kid's like 5 years old. And so they called him and they're like, we need help finding this kid. You know, he's been missing 2 days or whatever. And he's like, okay, you know, it's late. He's in bed. He's like, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Calls him back and it's like, do you have a state trooper, you know, around such and such area? Well, yeah. It's all right. Tell him to go down this road for approximately, you know, 2 miles or whatever. Stop, get out, take your compass, point it, you know, due north and walk 1,209 steps. This like distinct number of steps. And so the trooper gets there, calls back in, and is like, it's all uphill. And, you know, traditionally missing kids won't go uphill. And so they call Joe back and they're like, well, you know, he says this, what do you want to do? He's like, do what I fucking told you to do. And so he walks up, you know, these very specific amount of steps, calls out the kid's name, the kid responds right away.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you know, how did you know that? You know, it's like, yeah, remote viewing, duh. And the kid explained that he had been staying at this cabin that he just found when he was missing. And that when he was a kid, his dad told him always go toward the nearest light, but the nearest light was the moon if he went uphill. But it was just like so offhanded that they just called him and it's late at night and he's just like, yeah, give me a minute. I guess I'll do this. All right, cool. And then these very specific instructions, and then they find the kid.
Yeah.
So crazy.
It is very crazy. I hate saying it's crazy, not in the sense that I don't believe it. It's crazy, like, in the fact that it really happened. Like,
yeah, it's a stranger than fiction kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, now the really crazy story about him, and I'm sure you know this one, was when the government was trying to test him on his ability. And so they put him in a room with a sealed envelope and told us you have to remote view what's in the envelope and then remote view from there. Mm-hmm. And so he remote views into the envelope, sees coordinates, goes to those coordinates, and it's on Mars. So however long ago, and he sees Martians fighting.
Well, he doesn't even, so
I
they give him the coordinates. This was actually a thing that was developed by Ingo Swann, who was kind of a precursor to this whole CIA program. He was doing studies at the Stanford Research Institute, SRI. Mm-hmm. Part of that whole Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff study that they were doing. So they developed a program, a way to test people to see that, like, you know, to have no outside influence on what they're talking about. They would just give them GPS coordinates. And so he was given the GPS coordinates, doesn't have any information of where it's at, and starts talking about he's seeing a pyramid. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I see a pyramid, but this pyramid is huge. Like, this must be a new discovery or something, because this is probably 3 or 4 times as big as the pyramids in Egypt. Mm-hmm. It's huge. And the strangest thing about it is that there are big rooms inside this pyramid. And he's like, I keep seeing people, but they don't look like people. They're just like shadows of people, so like the people aren't here anymore. He's like, this is really weird. And they're like, okay, go back to a time that people are there. And so he goes back a little further and then sees like people who are, he describes them as like trying to almost hibernate, because there's something happening and they need to hibernate for a certain amount of time because something's happening. And he's trying to get information from these people. He's seeing all these structures, and he says the people are like 10 to 12 feet tall, super skinny. He's like, this is really weird. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So he finally like gets done with his remote viewing session, comes out and says, well, what was I even looking at? So they open up the envelope, and the envelope has the coordinates, and then it says Mars 1 million BC. So it's like 1 million years ago on Mars. He claims that he was remote viewing pyramids and humanoid people that are like 10 feet, 12 feet tall, and doesn't, saying that they were preparing for this time, that like they were trying to hibernate through putting themselves to sleep or something like that, but he felt like they were all dead and they were all gone. Very wild story.
Wild story, but again, that plays into where even Joe himself has said his accuracy is around 85%. So are we talking about that margin of error, that 15%, or are we talking about that 85%? But again, the way he tells these stories is very easy to believe him.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not heard a single thing that he said that I went, nah, it's bullshit.
So yeah, he even he said that when he read where it was, and he read what he was actually remote viewing, he was like, fuck. He was pissed off because he couldn't actually verify if it was true or not.
Yeah.
And so he kept that in his mind, and then he went to what is it, the Jet Labs propulsion place, where they have, it's like government funded space programs where they have like taken pictures of all these like they're mapping out Mars with a series of pictures taken by satellites. And so he went there and was like, okay, so the taxpayers fund all this research, right? And they're like, yeah. And so he's like, so all these images actually belong to the public and we can access them, right? And the guy says, yeah, I can get you whatever you want to look at. And he's like, okay, I want these specific coordinates. And the guy looks at the GPS coordinates and says, oh, you're talking about the old city on Mars. Knew exactly what he was talking about just by looking at the coordinates. And so he was like, what are you talking about? And so he pulls out the pictures, and it's a series of pictures of what look like old ruins of man-made or humanoid-made structures on Mars. And there's like roads, and the famous face on Mars is, not too far away from these pyramid structures and square buildings that, a lot of people are looking at now and saying that they believe that this is actually an old city that used to be there.
Think about that picture that came out recently from NASA of what looks like the base of a structure. It's kind of rectangular.
Yeah.
And the angles on it are very sharp, not basically what we would build, if we were going to build a structure. So I think there's more validity there than we can just brush off. I mean, we're only just now seeing, with the technology we have, more of that stuff on Mars. Like you said, the face, where it's slowly being covered and what have you. But it's only been recently that we've been able to see those things. But he's talking about these things in the 80s.
Yeah.
Way before the tech was there.
Yeah.
Or, not to jump around too much, even Ingo Swann, where he tells the story of, well, first when he was recruited, they did the kind of a black bag deal with like, come with us, but we're going to put a bag on your head and whatever, take him to this facility and then tell him, here's these different briefcases, one of them has a light in it, tell me which one it is. And he's like, well, I can't. And they just think he's full of shit, and they're like, okay, well, we'll get rid of you. He's like, I can't because the light in your suitcase is burned out, the light bulb. He's like, no, it's not. Opens it up, sure enough, it's burned out. So that was like the beginning of his career with the government. But later on, he does this remote viewing exercise where they want him to view the dark side of the moon. And so he does it, goes around to the dark side, but he's describing all of these structures. There's like domes and buildings and connecting tubes and all this stuff, and he like gets really close into one of these buildings, and he can see through the windows, and he can see these aliens inside, almost like they're at the chow hall, just fucking, you know, just eating and chilling out. But they turn around and notice him, and that's when he gets scared, and he's like, oh my god, they can see me, and kind of clicks back into his own body. But we've been hearing stories about there's bases on the dark side of the moon for fucking ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're perpetuated because of that or if they came before. But it's super interesting to me that these guys with this really fucking cool power are able to visit these planets that even at the time we didn't have the ability to visit.
Yeah.
You know, because I think Egos 1 was in the 60s, in the early 60s, right? Somewhere around there.
So yeah, they started doing research with Ingo Swann. It was pre-Stargate project, so it had to be probably late 60s, early 70s.
So yeah, you're talking during the time of the space race, potentially right before the moon landing.
Yeah.
Or around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, the tech wasn't there to visit the backside of the moon.
Well, he even talked about rings of Jupiter.
Yeah.
Jupiter having rings.
And he said that before
we even had seen them and verified that they were there. He was talking about he remote viewed them and saw these rings around Jupiter.
Which is fucking crazy.
Yeah. Which, I mean, seems like that's validation 100%. Like,
yeah.
Is it just a lucky guess? That's a fucking super lucky guess.
Well, and what would even propel you to guess something like that?
Yeah.
You know? Like, that would be like me saying, oh, this one planet in the Andromeda galaxy has drinkable water.
Yeah.
And being specific about that planet. Like, that's a 1 in a billion that I would get that even close to right.
Yeah.
But he was just like, oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So yeah, they started with kind of Ingo Swann, and then they got another guy that both Ingo Swann and Joe talk about being the most powerful psychic that they ever knew. A guy named Pat Price, who was doing all this crazy shit. Before they even started the project, the CIA got involved because they had seen what they were doing with Ingo Swann and wanted to see if they could use it as psychic spying. And so they were having this guy, Pat Price, kind of give them coordinates, and he would actually track in his mind all the Soviet subs. Like, he would just have a map of the oceans and then would just put pins in different places, and he was...
That's a lot of goddamn space.
Yeah, and he would keep track of where all the subs were all the time, and somebody would come and like take all the pins and move them, and then he would just go back and grab one pin at a time and just like, you know, the pins that represent certain subs, put them back in the board exactly where they were while they were tracking them. Which, I mean, really, if you look at it from like a defensive intelligence aspect, it's a huge asset to have.
Oh, enormous.
So, you know, they were dumping a lot of money into, you know, through these black programs, these dark programs that, you know, were didn't really exist at the time, you know. And so the CIA was like having him do stuff, and it was like 6 months after the CIA got involved, after they found out how powerful of a psychic this guy Pat Price actually was, he ends up dying. He had a history of heart problems, and so like he dies. The people come and take him to the hospital. He's dead, like, and so like, but the hospital reports that somebody else brought him there. They didn't say who it was that brought him there, but the guy had a briefcase. Gave him gave the hospital his records of having a heart issues, and he died of a heart attack. He's had heart problems in the past. We can go ahead and you don't have to do an autopsy or anything, and have him cremated.
Yeah.
So they did all that stuff, cremated him, and then notified his wife that he was dead.
Yeah. Shady.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing that and going, like, how does anybody buy that story?
Yeah.
Like, a little bit of Thorazine will just handle that.
Yeah.
Done.
Well, at the same time, the CIA had been, they kind of came out and said that they had developed this gun that can shoot a dart into somebody and make them have a cardiac arrest.
Yeah, and leave no trace.
And leave no trace. That was like a year later that they proved that they had that CIA weapon that they had developed.
Yeah, we got to give it like just enough time to escape liability.
Yeah. So I mean,
like, hey, do you remember last year when that really cool psychic guy died of a random heart attack? Yeah. Anyway, we had this fucking cool gun.
So from there, I mean, they got Ingo Swann involved in it, and then they started recruiting from the Army people with an aptitude that they thought were probably more likely to have these kind of psychic abilities, and so they started pulling people and giving them these like random tests. And Joe McGonigal talks about how he was kind of drafted into the program without him knowing it, and just was kind of like almost steered in this direction without his knowledge. And then, like,
they would never do that.
Ended up going to Vietnam, but he had a history, or like people knew him, like the people in his platoon knew that he would kind of know exactly what was going to happen before it happened. And so, they got into this barracks, and then he told all the people, like, he was like, we can't move into these barracks, they're not reinforced. And they're like, just get in there. And so he told all his guys to sandbag all their cots and shit. And so as soon as they got done sandbagging their cots, they got hit, they got attacked. And the only thing that saved all of them was because they had sandbagged their shit. And so he was telling stories about how he would be like, they'd be out just waiting for, kind of just in Vietnam at camp, and then he would just like have a feeling, and so he would just start walking into a bunker, and then all of a sudden everybody would just follow him into the bunker. Yeah. And then something would hit and blow up everything around him, and so all these people would just get saved by him just having a feeling. Which
transcends the whole remote viewing into something else.
Yeah.
Where a premonition, even if it's not founded in anything, or you can't actually see what's going to happen, but you have that gut instinct that seems to be right 100% of the time. Excuse me. That's way more than just remote viewing.
Yeah, so he had this reputation for being somebody that had this like ability to kind of read the energy and have a premonition of what's going to happen, and so he kind of got drafted into this program that the CIA was looking into, and became remote viewer number 001, and was one of the most celebrated through like medals and shit like that. Operator in the CIA program.
Anybody who's heard of remote viewing knows him or Ingo Swann.
Yeah.
Just because they're so prevalent in that field, I mean, even what's her name, Angela Ford, she did an episode of the Sean Ryan show where she was a psychic for the government. Those were kind of like heroes to her in a way. I mean, she didn't kind of hero worship them, but understood like their abilities were something to behold.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you're in Vietnam and dude's like, hey, we got to do this or we're going to die, and then you do it and you don't die, you're kind of like, all right, whatever you got to say, I'll listen.
You just tell me what to do and I'll fucking do it.
You need sandbags? I got fucking sandbags for days, dude. So let's go back to the difference between astral projection and remote viewing. So we kind of talked about it before, where astral projection is more of a consciousness thing, like a non-physical thing, but remote viewing does seem to be more of a physical thing, especially when you look at it through the Dark Side of the Moon story with Ingo Swann, where the aliens could see him. Do you think that's just like a him case, or is there something to be said for when you remote view, like your presence is there somehow?
I would have to think that, like, it's an energy thing, and if there are aliens there, and these so-called aliens are a more advanced race, and use these techniques to use telepathy and these other things that we as humans in this point in time like think are nonsense, but they're advanced beyond that and are able to use telekinetic energies and telekinesis and telepathy to communicate. And this guy is astral projecting or remote viewing this place, but his energy is going to this place. Maybe they're able to pick up on that and noticing that, like...
Yeah, I mean...
Just like we talked about, like a spirit is there or whatever.
Yeah, it would make sense, because if you are projecting your consciousness into another place, or at least some amount of your consciousness to another place, and we've heard stories for forever about how aliens communicate telepathically, then they could telepathically visualize your consciousness floating around.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But the story about Ingo Swann moving the dial on the magnetometer, that shows that there is something physical with it. And maybe it's just him, but it could be all of them. And that's where I have a really sharp distinction between projection and remote viewing, where I kind of feel like, you know, we talked about visualization from our eyes, where you're essentially putting a version of your eyes in a conscious version somewhere else to see something. So that's how you're able to pick these things up. It's not just an energetic thing. Like, you have to be able to visually produce a result in some way.
Yeah, in my mind, I think the astral projection is like your consciousness kind of leaving your physical space to go and kind of explore whatever you're looking for or whatever. And the remote viewing is tuning your consciousness to be able to experience whatever that thing is. So, like, if you look at like a lot of the remote viewing things, it'll be a lot of feelings, and like they'll write down a bunch of words, maybe do a sketch of what they're feeling that they're seeing, and then you have to translate that into, you know, most of the time the people that are seeing this, especially the ones that aren't super trained or super adept to this remote viewing, it'll seem super random until you see a picture of what they're actually, you know, what the target is.
Yeah.
Then it kind of all fills back in and makes sense. Like, so are they connecting to the energy of that area? And so it's like, okay, I'm feeling the energy of like a crisscross pattern of like, it's a bunch of squares, and there's a structure that's, you know, spanning a gap, you know, and then they see the target is like a chain link fence bridge that goes over the top of a valley. You know, it's like, to them it doesn't make any sense. They're just sensing, you know, they can't say exactly it's a bridge that goes over.
Yeah. I kind of think of it in like the layman's terms for my mind to be able to interpret it is astral projection is like flying a drone, but by visual sight. Like, I can see the drone, but the drone has a GoPro on it. But it's not until the drone comes back that I can view the footage. Versus remote viewing is like, You remember in the 90s when you had a remote control car, it wasn't actually remote control, you had a big cable where you're sending the car out, but you're still connected to it to drive it. That's kind of the way I differentiate the two, because the people who astral project, their body is completely unconscious. So when they come back, that's when they're able to tell, like, oh, I did this, I saw this. Versus a remote viewer can remote view and still be in their body at the same time.
Right.
They're still tethered somehow or another, that they're able to pass this information back and relay it somehow. And with Joe's case, where he did that interview, I think it was on the BBC, where they were trying to test him. So they put out 4 different envelopes, and in each envelope had a different place to go. So they gave one of the news anchors one envelope, like he chose it. And he got out in the car, opened up the envelope, they went to the place, and he had to remote view where that anchor was. And it was just like that. It was very fragmented the way he described it. He's like, I'm kind of seeing something flowing, like maybe water, I can't tell, and then these half circles and whatever. And the view that news anchor was looking at was a bridge where it had these half circles under the bottom and water going underneath. But as he's describing it, you're like, get the fuck out of here. But when he's finished with the picture and you realize it's exactly what that guy's looking at, he just can't like adequately describe it. You go, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, having that distinction between the two has really helped me kind of understand both of them separately, I think. Just because of the idea that one version requires you to still be awake and one requires you to be asleep, essentially.
Yeah, I think that maybe one is just a version, a heightened version of the other. Like maybe remote viewing is just a higher level of astral projection of where you can do it while you're conscious.
Yeah, but I also think with remote viewing, you're more bound to physical space versus astral projection. When people talk about going to see a different world or a different reality or slipping between realities, that sort of thing, where it's more energetically powered versus seeing an actual physical space or a physical object. Because some of these guys, you know, they'll remote view inside an envelope, see what's written down on a piece of paper inside an envelope, which is still a physical space. It's just a really small physical space.
Yeah. There was even a thing where they were trying to do that experiment, and so they brought the envelope into Ingo Swann. So, okay, tell us what's in the envelope. And he's like, that's dumb. I want to know what's in the envelope. I'll just open the envelope.
Yeah.
Why don't you do a real experiment? Have somebody that I don't know, that I can't tell you who you're going to go tell, send them somewhere, and I'll tell you what they're thinking or what they're saying. And so that's what they did, and he was able to draw a picture of exactly what they were looking at.
Yeah. And I understand, like, the scientific theory behind trying to do double blinds on it, but some of these guys can't function within the double blind setting where they have no knowledge. They just have to figure it out, where some of them, like, they have to have a picture of the person to see who they're looking for, to be able to see their surroundings. Almost like once they know who they're looking for, they can home in on wherever they're at.
Yeah.
So that's where it's kind of hard to prove it scientifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they do the double blind, is so, like, if you are saying, if they're telling me, hey, Dave is going to go be at this one spot, instead of me just trying to find where you're at, I could try to psychically connect to where you are, like hone in on your energy and then find where you're at, as opposed to somebody they don't know and it's just a random person at a random place. Everything has to be random for it to be more accurate, I think.
I do get that, but at the same time, you can still manipulate that.
Yeah.
Where
somebody's got to know.
Yeah. Where, like, let's say you were able to remote view, and I'm in the room with you, and they say, okay, I'm gonna take Dave, and we're gonna go somewhere, you know, and I surrender my phone and everything else. Like, I put a blindfold on, I can't see where I'm going. We get to whatever place is, and then they tell you to energetically link up with me and see where I'm at. Keep in mind, I still don't know where we're at, and I have no way to contact you or tell you or give you any hints, but you can still figure it out. It's not double blind, but it's still accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can actually do that.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, the program ran from 75 until 95 officially, and that's where they like kind of said that the program wasn't producing any knowledge, like any valid or like usable information that they could, you know, that was worth anything.
Sure.
And but at the same time, they gave Joe McGonigal the Legion of Merit badge, which is like the highest badge that you can get from like a
non-combatant.
combatant, like
a civilian, essentially.
yeah. Which is like, okay, if he didn't give any information. So he was tasked with looking at the Soviets, what they were doing. And this is the time of the Cold War. And so they you know, saw this building that the Soviets had built. And so they're like, okay, we want to know what's going on in this building. So he's remote viewing it, and basically said they're making a submarine that's like bigger than any submarine. He's like probably twice as big as a normal submarine, and it's shaped weird. Instead of like a tube like this, it's like two circles that are like this, and it's a really super powerful submarine. That's what it is. And so he gave his report and sent it to the generals or whatever, and the general or whoever was in charge said, yeah, that's nonsense. First of all, this building is too far away from the ocean for it to be a submarine. If they built it there, they'd have no way to transport it to the ocean because it'd be too big. And so he sent the report back and said, this is all fantasy. He wrote on the report, sent it back to him. And so Joe's basically wrote back on the report, this fantasy launches in 115 days. Yeah. Sent it back to him. And so finally, like, they had a spy plane go over and take pictures like 112 days later, or 116 days, like 2 days after he said it would launch, and saw that the Soviets had cut a trench all the way to that building. And so there was water now that came from the ocean all the way to that building, and docked out in the harbor was the biggest nuclear submarine that had ever been built. That's what the sub that they based the Red October on.
Yeah, which Sean Connery was totally the captain of.
Yeah.
And you 100% buy that he's Russian.
By his Scottish accent,
yeah.
Mostly.
Just like when he was in Highlander. Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez. Totally bought that he was a Spaniard, 100%. And I absolutely bought that the French guy was Scottish.
The accents are all the same.
Yeah. It's kind of like Peter Stormare, the actor. He's Swedish, but he always plays a Russian guy.
Yeah.
He's like, movie producers don't know the difference. If you have an accent, you're Russian.
Which is kind of off topic, but I was watching something, and for some reason this video came up of this lady that, like, she got into an accident and then, like, went into a coma, and when she woke up from her coma, she spoke with a super Asian accent.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
So she sounded like she's this British lady, and then, like, wakes up from this coma and she's speaking like she's from Hong Kong or something. It's kind of bizarre.
What you want?
She said, I sound like I'm from Hong Kong.
That is a crazy thing when people wake up from comas and they have these weird gifts.
Yeah.
Like suddenly they can immaculately play piano, or they have profound knowledge of the stock market or things like that. Kind of makes me wish I'd go into a coma and wake up with some really cool ability.
Yeah.
No, I'm not ready. Like, let's finish the episode. Wake up, I just have brain damage.
You okay? Let me cut here. I gotta take a look.
Okay. I remote viewed you the whole time.
Nice. I was hoping you were.
That's an impressive
That's why
wiener
I was
you got.
doing that dance.
I saw the helicopter too. I'm gonna have to wipe that off the wall, by the way.
But helicopter is more of a fucking drone. Like, but even like we're talking about people having these concussions and near-death experiences and are able to do these things. Even Joe McGonigal had a few different NDEs. There was one when he was in Vietnam where he was in a helicopter. A helicopter got blown out of the sky, and he fell from the helicopter and landed on the ground and passed out for a while, had a near-death experience. Then another time he was in Germany or something, and believes that he was poisoned by somebody, and so he died out on the street, and they picked him up and rushed him to this hospital, and the whole time he was having this out-of-body experience. Talking about him like watching himself being resuscitated on the ground, and like every time the guy that was doing CPR would like do chest compressions, he would snap back into his body, kind of wake up for a second, and then like snap back out, and then be like on the side standing there watching what's happening. And then going to this hospital, and then as soon as he was in this hospital, he was in this place that was like just full of light, and just being engulfed in light, and so he's kind of like he was going to heaven or whatever. And then all of a sudden he like snapped back into reality, into his body, and sat up and that he had been out for like 2 days. Sat straight up and yelled out that God is light and it can never be destroyed or something like that. And his roommate, the guy that was there in the room that thought he was dead this whole time, just like called the doctors. Said this guy's going crazy. But kind of after that is when he was put into these programs.
Yeah, it sounds like that's where the CIA was beta testing the first version of that heart attack gun.
Maybe.
They're like, fuck, that didn't work.
Yeah. Make it stronger.
Yeah. Give this one just a little bit more zip.
Can you increase the dosage a little bit?
Well, I mean, even going back to the near-death experience episode we did, or after-death experience, where a lot of these people, they die at the hospital on the table and they can see everything in the room because they're essentially also having an out-of-body experience. And I really do think there is something to it where I don't know how to adequately describe it. Your vessel dies, but your consciousness is still there for whatever reason. That when you go back in, where there's no more veil between you and the other side anymore, and that's got to be like the ticket of how these people are able to do these things. Whether it's summoning UAPs, astral projection, remote viewing, or the ability to see the future or see future events. There's something to it, because that is the through line with every single one of these characters, is that they've had near-death or after-death experiences in their life. And it seems like the more you have, the more abilities you have.
Yeah. It's almost like once you've seen outside of the prism of reality, your capability of seeing that through that prism differently is shifted, so you can you can tap into or tune into or click in or out of,
you just see that there is no more prism. You're not bound to it anymore. It's almost like everybody is on the same freeway going the same direction, and once you've taken an off ramp, you no longer have to get back on that freeway. You could just fly above everybody now. But maybe that's like the secret to creating superheroes, is you got to kill them over and over. Kill them, resuscitate them.
Yeah.
Worked for Deadpool.
Or maybe it's like, we've talked about in kind of a multiverse scenario where you have a near-death experience, but in how many other realities through this multiverse that version of yourself dies in that situation.
Yeah.
And so you're like the one, Jackie Chan in the one, where you're absorbing all that energy that is lost from those other versions of yourself. You're combining that energy into your own force.
Well, that would actually explain remote viewing a lot more, considering like what I was saying with kind of being tethered, where you could look at it as another version of yourself from another universe has passed away, but their consciousness is still floating out in the ether, where it's not actually you that's remote viewing, it's your alternate version of yourself, but you can energetically link with them.
Tapping into that.
Solved it.
Solved it, dude. This
God,
shit's easy,
fucking-
dude. Being a scientist is fucking so easy.
So easy. We just sit here and drink beer and theorize and just stumble across the right answer.
I kind of think that's how science is, really. Come up with a hypothesis, now we just have to find a way to test it.
I don't know how we would do it.
Yeah.
I think let's just assume that we're right.
What's that movie? Is it Sleepers? Where they like kill each other for like a certain amount of time and then bring each other back?
Flatliners.
Flatliners, yeah.
Yeah. Very cool concept.
Yeah.
That was actually a really cool movie. Execution wasn't great, but I liked the idea that after they would have the after-death experience, they would start seeing things and have these like paranormal experiences, and then they just decided to stop doing that, and then suddenly they're okay.
Yeah.
Like, there's no off switch for that, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe you just died now and you're a ghost actually now. Maybe that's what the movie was about.
Could have
I
been.
can't remember.
I remember the remake.
Was there a remake?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, with, what's her name, who played Juno?
Oh. I mean, what's his name?
What's his name?
Elliot.
Elliot Page.
Page.
Back then it was Ellen Page.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, remake was fun. I can't remember the original to compare
I
it.
didn't know that they remade it. I'll have to check that out. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth a watch. Nothing to write home about, but the concept is still there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it does make you wonder if kind of how that process does work. More so than just, I don't know, I kind of want to give it credence beyond just saying we can all do it. I like subconsciously want there to be a factor that has to be put into place. Otherwise, what's to stop us from doing it by accident and en masse?
I think that it's... I think that Joe kind of talks about that in saying that the way to really do it and be like conscious about doing it is just through a lot of focus and practice. And most people aren't really willing to put the time into or have the time to do it. Even he says that it's something like you don't just get good at it and then you can like stop doing it for a while and then go back to doing it at a higher
Perishable.
level. So it's like something that you have to do continuously every day, or else it's like 5 steps forward, 4 steps back. Like you take a few days off and all of a sudden you're back to square two, you know, almost starting all the way over to build up that focus on.
Well, I think that goes with everything, right? I mean, you think about a professional athlete, you know, they're going to go through their training season, their game season, and then in their off season, they're going to fuck off, eat food, drink beer, and get fat. Mm-hmm. And then when they get back into it, it's going to be a rough go for a little while till you build that muscle memory back up. And it's the same with, like, writing. You know, if you like to write, you should write something every day. Because if you're playing basketball, wouldn't you practice every day? Why wouldn't you do the same with writing?
Yeah.
And therefore the same thing with, you know, these crazy abilities. Why wouldn't you put effort into it every day if you know you can do it? Mm-hmm. And if you want to get good at it, you definitely have to put effort into it every day.
Yeah.
But the world we live in is so full of distractions, you know. Because it's easy to just sit and doom scroll on your phone versus go, you know what, I'm going to try astral projection. And I'm going to work at it every day till I get it.
Yeah.
Especially something that seems very far-fetched. You're like, I'm not going to put energy into that. I mean, I would, but most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
But again, I do want to give it some kind of validity that there has to be some other extenuating factor that gives them more ability to it, rather than, you know, you may do it by accident while you're sleeping one night, you know, one night in 10 years you'll do it, versus, you know, people like him who can just do it on command, but he's had all these near-death experiences or after death. Or the same with any one of those people that, you know, have gone through some big life-changing traumatic event that suddenly have this crazy ability that they have extreme power over.
Yeah. I'd kind of like to know if, and I don't recall, I know that there was something that Joe was talking about with like kind of being, I want to say he was talking about being attacked in his room by some dark entity at some point when he lived in Vietnam.
See, that's happened to you. Maybe I was wrong, and your ability is remote viewing.
I'm more than simply a fortune teller. Working on hovering these days.
Now you can remote view.
I've almost got my legs off the floor, so.
Well, now that you can remote view and fortune tell, that makes you more powerful than me.
Yeah.
I gotta come up with another ability.
We'll work on it. These things take months.
I want something practical, though. I want, like remote ejaculation. Like, I just think about it and make somebody ejaculate.
You're welcome.
Dude, can you imagine just, like, being in a meeting at work and you're just bored and you're like, let's spice it up. Everybody suddenly like, ah.
And you get an orgasm, and you get an orgasm.
It's just like all at once, everybody's just like,
going down the line.
Can you imagine that party line at the bar? You could be, you know.
We didn't have to go to the bar at that point, dude.
Well, you could just be, you know, talking to some lovely young lady and be like, I have a party trick I bet you've never seen before. I bet I can.
Bet you never experienced this before.
This is going to be really special. No, you can't do nothing. Watch. Sploosh. Oh, God. You're going to get whatever you want out of that one.
Yeah.
Just saying, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
And it would be, like, really helpful if you were ever being attacked.
Have you seen that fucking, the Jedi thing with that?
Oh, where he's...
Yeah. They're like about to duel with the fucking, and he's like...
Realistically, like, if I could remote view, which this is probably the reason why I can't remote view right now, at least, because I would fuck with people so hard. Think about this, like, especially if remote viewing, you can manipulate physical matter while you're doing it. You know, like you can go swan move the magnetometer, right? Yeah. I would do something like, in my physical body, I would text Scott, hey, do you want to go out tonight? And then I would remote view right into his house, just to the moment where he picks up his phone, and right as he's texting me some bullshit reason of why not to, squirrel tap. Oh, fuck! Then he texts me back, oh, I can't tonight. Oh, it's all good.
Never mind, I found somebody else to go hang out with. That I actually want to go out with.
Never mind, I just remote viewed into Spencer's house. I saw his calendar was clear. I hit him up. He's cool.
Yep. Just joking, Scott. You should come over sometime.
I'm not. Fuck you. I'm kidding. Kind of. He's an easy target.
We just have to plan on doing another movie. It seems.
Yeah, that's the winning ticket.
Yeah.
No, if I could remote view, I couldn't be trusted with it.
At this point, I don't think I would either. I'd just probably be like remote viewing stupid shit.
See, that's where we kind of have the credibility of being somewhat crackpot podcasters, because I would go remote view like Area 51, Wright-Patterson, Dugway, the White House. I'd remote view all these places with all these crazy secrets come on here and do all these episodes about this is what I saw and blah blah blah, and they'll either write me off as a a crackpot, or they're gonna be like, how the fuck do you know that?
Yeah, I would probably just remote view boobs like
All day long,
dude. That
all day long.
That's why I couldn't be trusted with it.
That like I wouldn't do anything, but it'd just be like, hey, nice tits.
Hey, congratulations.
I'm just permanently at Cindy Sweeney's house.
Yeah. Boobs. Remote viewing boobs.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, this whole time I was researching and I was like, dude, I'm gonna fucking start listening to some binaural beats and get my fucking hemi-sync going on. I'm gonna fucking start astral projecting and then move into some remote viewing type shit. But I haven't done any of that stuff yet.
I haven't either. It's been busy.
Yeah.
But I had been thinking about it, of like, how do you find the correct space for that, And I thought, what would probably be best is just kind of like out in the desert at nighttime. Put your headphones on, just sit there, listening to your dual frequency, trying to get your hemi-sync going, and the next thing you know, you're just like floating around.
Yeah. I'd want to do it in somewhere with a roof, though, for some reason.
I'll get you a tent, little pop-up pavilion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that my mind would be too preoccupied about like, what if it actually works and I float away from my body?
Well, that's where I kind of thought the big, wide open space where, let's say you are floating around, you can identify where you're supposed to go, because if you've ever been in an airplane and you look down and you see all the houses and shit, and you're like, oh, where's mine? Fuck. Versus, one open field where you're like, oh, I'm right there, right next to the truck.
And you just go find somebody else that's astral projecting and just hop into there.
Yeah. Like, dude, you want to switch for a minute?
Yeah. Freaky Friday this shit.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Maybe that's what that movie's about. We just didn't ever realize it.
Yeah, actually. Well, I mean, did you ever see like the pseudo remake version with Vince Vaughn?
What?
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I only know like the synopsis, but there's a version of Freaky Friday where Vince Vaughn is like a serial killer, and he ends up accidentally switching bodies with like a 16 or 17-year-old girl.
Oh yeah. What is that movie called?
I want to say it's just Freaky. I'm pretty sure it's just called Freaky. But yeah, you could totally do that.
Yeah.
How crazy would it be? Like, you just end up in somebody else's body and they end up in yours, and now you got to live each other's life, like the change up.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, I'd switch bodies with Jamie Lee Curtis. 1992-ish.
Just for like 10 minutes. Just enough time to explore. Is this a script for True Lies? Signing on.
I'm in. You don't need to see boobs, so what?
No, what she did was actually better than boobs.
Yeah.
I'll give her credit on that one. I think it would have cheapened it if she was naked.
You're right.
I've thought about that.
Plus, I would have had to close my eyes. I wouldn't be able to see them anyways. So.
Yeah. I'd have had to remote view them. So how much validity do you give to remote viewing on a scale of 1 to 10?
Personally, I would give it, most of those like high capacity psychics that were in the program, I would say probably 95% believable of, all the things that they talked about. And even like, so when they decommissioned the whole project, they said that, out of 700 projects that they were actually like admitted that they worked on, 350 of those projects, they gave really super valid information that was really a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
So even that was like 60%
Yeah.
of the work that they did turned out fruitful and was a lot of information. And the remote viewing that he did on the submarine was more recon than they had, in 4 days of him remote viewing,
Mm-hmm.
than they had collected in like 5 years of trying to figure out what the Soviets had. So I mean, there's proof that it actually did work and is a really huge asset that could be utilized.
I think even looking at the factor of 60%, where you really only had a few kind of spearhead figures to a piece that's kind of like taboo at the time, where it's not as widely accepted. There was no Monroe University at the time or anything. It was kind of who. So the people they're bringing in just have raw talent and they're trying to train them. So I could see that, like, the success rate being lower because of that, versus now where, for one thing, it's not this who thing where it's proven that it's a real thing. You would have much higher results.
Yeah, well, also with so they said that the program spanned officially from 1975 to 1995, and they had spent, it was like $20 million that they had spent on this program over 20 years, which is $1 million a year, which is pretty low for a government project.
Yeah.
And to get information like what they got with the submarine, as opposed to like trying to build a airplane that can fly high enough that they're not going to detect, which would probably cost 3-4 times that.
Yeah.
To do one specific task. It was like you had one guy sitting in a room in a wooden barracks in the middle of fucking nowhere, California, or wherever they were at, doing this for whatever his salary was for the year.
Well, I remember hearing about Ingo Swann's salary when he was like full time, and it seemed kind of low. Like, I'm gonna butcher it. It was like $1,000 or $2,000 a month or something like that. But adjusted for inflation, it was like $11,000. I heard a podcast about it years ago, and like I said, I don't have the numbers right, but adjusted for inflation, guys making 6 figures a year just doing remote viewing.
Yeah.
Which in this day and age is not much, where the one lady in California who's part of the water management team makes $750,000 and does half as much.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that they're spending a lot less on this smaller project than the bigger ones, but they're actually yielding results that they can prove.
I think most of the politicians were remote viewing what was going on in California where they went on vacation.
Facts.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that the information return on the money being put out was so much higher than the cost. What they were getting for the cost was a lot higher. It was worth it.
Oh, 100%.
So which is why I don't really believe that they've actually totally ended these programs and it's just some kind of...
No, I don't think so either. And one of my putting proofs on that is when you go on YouTube and you look at the two different terms, astral projection and remote viewing. When you look at remote viewing, you'll see stories of Ingo Swann or Joe or the Gateway process or whatever, Stargazer. And you'll see information about that, but when you look at astral projection, there's a billion tutorial videos. There's so much that you could watch or even listen to the breakdown of the Gateway process from the CIA, because you kind of have information and instruction on one category and then story and history on the other. And that kind of shows me of there's a lot more attention on remote viewing because it's viable but it's also trying to not prove the process. Versus astral projection is like, yeah, there's a process and here's how you do it. Because it's almost like watering one down to preserve the other. Of like, yeah, focus on this. You guys can try this one. Don't worry about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
I wonder if it's like they're giving you the how-to on the astral projection, because most of it is like most of these people are just going to fall asleep.
Yeah, yeah.
This is going to give you good sleep. That's
Yeah.
what most people are probably going into it for. But on the other hand, we don't want to tell you how to actually remote view, because that's fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
Think of somebody that can just be like remote viewing the nuclear codes to launch all the nuclear missiles. Like,
You can remote view into the FBI office and look at the Epstein list.
Yeah.
It's
dangerous.
It is dangerous. But yeah, the fall asleep thing is definitely a factor. When it's like, I want to say it was your right hemisphere is between 15 and 13 hertz, and then your left hemisphere was like 13 to 30 hertz. What if you just put those two sound waves together and it just makes you pass out?
Yeah.
And then you're going to keep trying it because you're like, I'm going to stay awake this time.
Maybe that's what we got to do, is just figure out I guess it'll probably be different for every person what the frequency is, just to fucking cause ejaculation.
Ooh.
And you just get that fucking tone.
Just build it into like a gun.
Almost
a sound
like
gun.
singing the brown note to fucking make somebody shit their pants. Like, you're just like, and then you just
Oh, god damn. I'm sorry, we gotta kill it. I'm still saying both of those would be really helpful if you're being attacked. If some really big dude was coming after you with a knife and you're just like, ejaculate! It gives you time to get away.
Would you have to have another person? So like, we'd be like, the guys that put their rings together, the Fantastic Four. But like, you're at a bar and like some guy just jumps in front of you and is like, ha. Some guy jumps behind you, ha. So you're getting the two tones at the same time. Like, what the fuck are you? Oh shit!
One of us is the bass, the other one's the treble. And when we combine, they ejaculate and shit their pants. They're just like, ah! Does anybody have any water? Maybe a moist towelette? That could be our new superpower.
That's our. We go through our whole fucking series of trying to do the astral projection and remote viewing, and then have a new series about our superpowers of fucking brown noting people in the bar.
Dude. Then we get so powerful we can do it through YouTube.
Yeah.
To where like the 5 people who are actually going to watch this are like, there's no. Jesus Christ. They really
We
are.
strongly advise you to watch these videos on the shitter.
On the shit. Make sure you're tucked down in there. It's going to be messy. Bathtub is also okay.
Shower is a possibility if you want to give a good waffle stomp.
Yeah, just maybe have some soup right before. Definitely with no pants on.
No pants required.
That's literally in the warning label.
Yeah.
Warning. View at your own discretion. No pants advised.
All right. Well, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
We do. What's the first place you would go if you could remote view?
Well, according to Joe, the only way to you can't actually just come up with a place to go remote view.
Well, let's just say theoretically.
Theoretically.
Anywhere on the planet or out of the planet, doesn't matter.
I don't know about the first place, but I would like to see the Vatican archives.
Ooh, good choice.
I would say Area 51, but I don't think they have shit going on there anymore.
I literally was just thinking Dugway, because I was like, anything that was in Area 51, that's been moved.
Yeah.
That place has been too high profile for too long for them to actually keep anything there.
Dugway, I think the Dugway is also getting to that point of like, there's a lot of speculation about it going around, and so, I think they have all that shit kind of spread out. Maybe Wright-Patterson would be a good place to still look, but like, I think that there are so many places that are so top secret that, you know, they just keep these stupid places open like Area 51 and Dugway just as a ploy for people to focus direct their focus on.
Yeah. I would say Dugway is still very active. Area 51 not so much, again, because it's so high profile. High profile enough that you had the Storm Area 51 thing, that it kind of became somewhat of a scare of like, holy shit, this could really happen. But Dugway is a little bit more closed off, a little bit harder to get to. So I could see them still being active there.
Yeah.
Plus it's like the kind of mountain faces in that region they could easily burrow into and have ultimate protection. But Dulce,
maybe Antarctica
for sure. The Denver airport.
Maybe just beneath the Denver airport.
Yeah.
Or maybe beneath the pyramids, which they have talked about. The remote viewers had seen, they came out with reports of the remote viewers seeing like big cylindrical structures under the pyramids.
Yeah, they think that the pyramid is actually just the top of an obelisk.
Yeah. And have you seen recently? They just did like some new type of scan, and there's all these structures that go down like 2 kilometers underneath
Oh,
the
wow.
pyramid.
So maybe they are just the tip of an obelisk.
And they said there's almost like just a huge, like a screw thing that goes down into the bedrock about 2 kilometers down.
Yeah, explain that one, archaeologist.
Yeah.
How the hell?
That just came out like last week.
Oh, I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah.
Now I got a rabbit hole. Maybe we're gonna have to do the pyramids soon.
Maybe.
I mean, we got our next 2 lined up, but pyramids does need to happen.
Yeah.
There's so much there to talk about. But yeah, I would definitely remote view the pyramids.
Yeah. If I could, I would remote view the pyramids in the past.
Ooh, even better.
Yeah.
Back when you see just like a 5-mile hole in the ground where they're building up.
Yeah, or maybe they started from the ground and then all the sand is just built up to the top of the fucking obelisk.
Hey, if I was gonna build any huge place, that's where I would do it, where there's a lot of sandstorms.
Yeah.
Because it'll bury it overnight.
Well, maybe that's how they were able to keep on building so high, is because the sand would raise up and then you build another level, and the sand raises up and you build another level.
Or maybe it was, maybe they were built like during Pangea times, but they were so structurally sound they survived the movement of the continents, but now they're in a desert region, so they got backfilled with sand.
What if the dinosaurs actually built the pyramids? The lizard people.
The lizard people. Yeah, let's put another fucking check one on that. We just solved all of that. It was built during Pangea by the dinosaurs.
By the dinosaurs.
Solved it.
No need to do an episode on the pyramids.
I think we should just have a whole TV show where we just do that. They're just like, hey, how do you think this happened? Oh, we have a few beers. All right, here's what happened. It just makes up some wild
Next
shit.
caller.
Next caller.
That was a dumb question.
Like, how do you think we cure cancer? Nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah, they already know the cure for cancer. It's ivermectin.
It's horse dewormer.
But yeah, we'll have to look into the fucking pyramids.
For sure, for sure. But I'm glad we did talk about this one. I'm glad we talked about this one and astral projection.
Yeah.
Especially separately. As separately as you can.
If anybody has any questions, I'll be your astral guide. Well, Dave will be your astral guide. Yeah, you will.
Or I'll bring all the Astro Glide too.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you need. But yeah, that was good. Let's kill it. Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.